Now we are going with Mette. Hello.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yeah.
really well. All good?
Yeah, all good.
So Mette,
Getting,
you are,
yeah.
I'm starting from the hardest point. You are a mom, which in
Yeah.
my opinion, this is the hardest point. So you're a mom, you're a triathlon coach, you're a researcher and as well a winner of Norseman. And now you will just tell us something about, you will give us some details regarding the specific details about the role of female sex hormones in extreme sports.
Yeah, that's a quite of an interesting title for a big seminar. But I can tell you a little bit about the reason for me talking about this. I am, for the moment, writing my master thesis about this theme. And I'm looking into female sex hormones in regards of performance. And it's quite interesting, actually, because what I've experienced with my research and my studying is that I have actually done a lot of mistakes in both of my training and also in my racing. The interesting thing with this is that when I started to think about going back to school and doing a master thesis, I did not think about getting into female physiology at all. I was more into looking at the physiological part of the performance when it comes to running and biking and swimming. What I understood with that is that there has been a lot of research done already, especially on young white men, and not so much on females. And the interesting thing is that I've been working as a coach for like almost 10 years now, and what I've experienced is that I can see that there's a lot of difference between both female and from between females and men when it comes to the training. And when I was looking into research, I found out that the way the research has been done with females is methodology is really not the best part of the research. So the uncertainty with the research that's already been done is really, really large. So what has come out of that was that last year in 2020, there was a researcher named Kelly Lee McNulty who made up, together with Elliot Sale, made up a meta study with female sex hormones and performance. And that concluded actually that there are nothing to be found of any significance at all. So that was kind of a funny thing because all of the research was so spread all over the board that it was impossible to say something really meaningful about how do we do this when it comes to our training. So, and that was the origin for my interest is I really need a tool so that I can bring my athletes something to train for and plan for in regards of their menstrual cycle and training, because females are female, and the good thing about the females is that we are different, and we have sex hormones that are not in the same degree as male have. We have testosterone, the same as men, but not the same amount at all. And we also have estrogen, and we also have progesterone, which are the two female sex hormones that actually makes us female make and produce babies, which is quite actually spectacular if you ask me. So I'm gonna try to talk you through this little thing, not trying to talk in so termic or medical terms, so you probably will understand. But the point is, with my chat today, is to make everybody be a little bit more aware of how they could and try to plan the training accordingly to their menstrual cycle, because it's really, really different. with that, I mean that the menstrual cycle is very, very variable amongst female and also for every female. If I ask you people here around who is listening today, when did you have your first or your last period? And do you really know what kind of phase or cycle of the cycle you actually are in now? Because that is really interesting when it comes to your training. And if I say, do you know if you are in a high hormone phase or if you are in a low hormone phase? And do you know when you actually ovulated? I expect my athletes to know this because it could give you an advantage when it comes to training. So if you take one step back, it's quite interesting to talk about this because and Dag and Tanya, if I'm talking too much, just stop me. But it's quite interesting if we take a step back, because if you look into, for example, female participation in sports, in Seoul, in the Olympics in Seoul in 1988, there were 26% that were representative as females. In Rio, there were 45% female representative in the sports. And in Tokyo, there is set up to have exactly the same amount of medals for both females and for men. And you think about that, there's quite a short of a time span for female participation in sports when it comes to, for example, the men. Which means that we have, or female have had a shorter time in actually progressing and trying to develop as athletes. So what we think is that the margins in female sports has not yet been reached. But we can see, if you looked at the statistics in the male section, that they already have made a plateau. So they kind of like struggling for the small percentage. We can still see females doing leaps when it comes to performance in sports. And I find that really interesting. So it's not wonder that there's we kind of like have a drag behind the males when it comes to research, because it's not been female in sports for so many years that we actually have research to show. So what we think with this new participation in sport is actually pretty new. It's not that many years since female actually were not allowed to run a marathon. I don't know if you remember Boston Marathon in the 70s, when the first female actually was haunted out of the race because she was wanting to compete. So it's kind of like it's pretty new when it comes to how long the sport actually has been there. So since we are behind in research, there's a lot of things that we could find out in regards of females and their sex hormones. And what I would like for you to take home with you today from this chat from me is that what we actually have as females as an advantage above men is our menstrual cycle. And remember, I'm now talking about healthy females with no sickness and bad health when it comes to the menstruation, because that's a topic that I'm not going into now. But I'm talking about healthy females having a regular menstruation. And if you think about it, it's kind of interesting, because what is a big problem today, like a huge problem, both for men and for female, is actually under recovery, or what we know now as is in terms for in medicine is what we call RED-S. And RED-S is actually what we say is relative energy deficiency in sports. And that is something that tells you that if you have some kind of low energy availability, that actually impairs your bodily process, such as, for example, menstruation function. It's something that goes over to muscular, skeletal health, gastrointestinal function, cardiovascular function, and growth and development. So if you have RED-S and you have low energy availability, which means that you might not recover really good, the first thing that probably will pop or go away is your endocrine system. And your endocrine system is what actually runs and triggers your menstruation or your period. So it's kind of like nature's own way of telling you that you are on the right side of the edge. You're training not too hard, you're training hard, but you are actually recovering good. When I say that, it's also important to remember that that's not always the case. Some girls and females experience RED-S while still having their period. Okay, so it's not always the case, but a lot of the times that's actually what is happening. So your menstrual cycle is, when we talk in regular terms, it's really variable. You have it around 28 to 35 days. It's fluctuating somewhat. And if you're having a regular menstruation every month or every period, it means that you are eumenorrheic. If you have regular menstruation, like missing a period, etc., it's what we call oligomenorrhea. If you have amenorrhea, it means that you actually are lacking menstruation in total. And that is not a good thing, especially when it comes to young girls who is growing and at their start of their teenagers and up until they're 20 years old is actually a crucial time for establishing a good bone health. And good bone health is something you really need if you want to run as fast as Flora. Okay, so it's really important to have a healthy menstruation from the beginning, and also knowing that you're having a regular one. So because estrogen is really, really important when it comes to having a healthy bone health. So all of these things is important for an athlete to know and to also plan for, because the menstruation, when it talks basics, it's what we call first the follicle phase. It's the first 14 days of your menstruation, and the last phase is your luteal phase, which is the high hormone phases, a lot of people call it. Your ovulation, where your egg sets or your corpus luteum is released from your ovaries, is in the middle, around day 13 to 15. And what people experience is that after your this is really important, because after you ovulated, your body releases a lot of progesterone, and progesterone is actually making female's body core temperature higher. So what we see is that the basal body temperature after ovulation rises to about 0.3 to 0.5 degrees. And as Flora said, she was actually competing in a really, really hot environment. And what we know that for every 1 Celsius degree that our body temperature is elevated, you actually have, your body has to cope with that by for example, having your heart rate elevated by 7 strokes. Okay, so this is statistics, this is research, so there's a lot of paper behind these numbers. But that is quite a lot if you are competing in a long distance race. Okay, so what does that tell us? It tells us, first of all, that your body is under more stress in your late luteal phase or in your high hormone phase. And what I'm talking about now is the around 5 to 6 days before your period starts. Your period starts at day 1. So, and it repeats. But this is actually crucial when it comes to preparing for training, when it comes to training in hot environments, and also when it comes for planning your training that's actually pretty hard. because you really need to have your body set up for dealing with this. So by knowing when you actually are in a high hormone phase and you're in a low hormone phase, makes you able to plan when you are supposed to have your, like, if you're going to do the VO2 max session, you should always plan that either straight after your ovulation or in the low hormone phase. Okay. So knowing this makes you actually, like Flora said, she said that she was, what was the word? She said she's paying a lot of her attention to her body. And this is just what this is all about, is paying attention to your body. And if you do so and you feel that you actually are not hitting high numbers, not hitting the numbers you actually are supposed to, either in wattage or in heart rate or in kilometers per hour or whatever, if you know that you actually are in a high hormone phase, it's kind of like lower your shoulders and letting you know that it's not a big deal. But even better, you can plan to do it either before or after you are in these states. So what I do with my athletes is that I talk about, do you have a regular menstruation? Do you know when you actually are ovulating? Do you have a track of your cycle? Like, do you really know how your mood is and how your sleeping pattern is and your heart rate, etc.? Do you know that every month? If you don't know that, it's the first thing you actually have to do. And I am not that kind of coach that tell my athletes to give them their numbers. I don't really need to know their period. I really want themselves to know how their body is working and getting to know their own physiology. Because what I really, really know is that this is really individual for all of the athletes or female. It could also be individuals for a female throughout the year. So the point is that you really should do a job with tracking your own cycle and getting and taking notes on how you feel and how your experience in training is, etc. And if you're doing the same workout, it should actually you should actually feel that or know that if you are in the same state, you should hit the high numbers and feel the same way. But not always do we do that, and that is when the cycle kicks in. Is that a reason why? That makes you even understand your training even better and planning your training even better. So, because the red S, that I was talking about, is a big problem in sports. Maybe not so much in long distance triathlon, because if you can't train this amount, if you are not recovered enough, you won't be able to either participate or to finish a race. But what I see with a lot of females is that there are a lot of the times are neglecting their own recovery. And I see that a lot of people are prioritizing training over sleep and neglecting to actually recover after training when it comes to nutrition. And by doing so, you're actually adding stress to your body, which you really don't want to add, because adding stress to your body, like not eating after practice, is raising your cortisol level in such a way that you're telling your body that you have to stack up because you have to, because there's not food coming. And that means actually that you are bulking up a lot of extra fat. So in order to recover and to heal your muscles and your organ that has actually been used, it's really important to address these things when sleeping, and especially eating healthy and straight after you have been training. So, and Flora was also into that, talking a little bit about it. But what we see with female and estrogen and progesterone, the sex hormones, is that female have a tendency to store more fat and also use more fat in their training, and that is because of the sex hormones. When it comes to comparing females and men. And that's actually an advantage when it comes to, for example, long distance racing. Maybe it's not the biggest advantage when it comes to hard, short races. But when it comes to long races, that's actually a big advantage. So it's nice to know that if you actually have thought about what Flora said. And what also I would like to say is that having a normal menstruation cycle and having a normal bleeding every month it's not always correct to say if you are using oral contraceptive, because oral contraceptive is something that is it's fake for the body, and it's actually not a normal bleeding you have. You are kind of like forcing the body to shed blood from your endometrium, and it's not a normal menstruation. So if you are bleeding and having and using oral contraceptive, it's sometimes it can actually disguise if your endocrine system is set off balance. So if you are a female training, you should always ask yourself, why do you use oral contraceptive? And that's always a personal issue, but sometimes you should ask yourself if that's really what's the best for you, because your menstrual cycle and your normal rhythm is something that actually can help you to stay on top of the game and having like your messenger systems working on your behalf. So I can talk more, but I think we're going to try to. I can see there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there are so many questions, Mette. I have one question for you. If do contraceptives influence the performance of an athlete, of a female athlete?
That's a really, really good question. And to speak from the research point of view, it says both. So it could be both enhancing and both affecting your performance. But I think that the main thing with contraceptive is that I think a lot of people use oral contraceptive because they are used to it, because that's the only thing that actually can be offered for female, because a lot of doctors are into that. But I know that there has been quite a few new contraceptive methods, like for example what in Norwegian we call it p-stav. It's like something you put in your arm, and also you have this vagina ring, which consists of hormones that is less systemic. So I know that some of these are better for female than oral contraceptive, but I would truly recommend that if you are in some way wondering about this is a question you should really address with your physician, with your doctor. Okay?
Okay. No, I mean, I was thinking if this influence in a positive way or in a negative way.
Yeah, I can tell you that some people or some girls or females actually have so much trouble with their menstrual bleeding, cramping and pain and fever, that oral contraceptive is actually the one thing that can help them to make this go away or to ease the pain. So for a lot of female, it's actually a good thing. Okay? So, but it's important to separate from health and from people who have actually like endometriosis, for example, that could actually help them. But again, I would truly recommend that if you have any issues with this, that's something you should address with your doctor.
We have a lot of questions out there, as you can see. And for example, about menopause and training, do you have any specific advice?
Oh my God, the research
Should we open the book? Should we open the book?
Yeah, I should. But what is interesting now is that there is actually a lot of research happening now on this issue. But if you're a female in menopause, I think it's, first of all, you have to find out if estrogen tablet is something you need, because some need them, of course. And also, I think it's wise to mix up the training a little bit, not do so much low intensity, but more do like hard, like HIIT intervals. And also strength training is crucial when you hit menopause. You really need to hit those weights, because that will actually give you bigger or better life quality. So strength training is something we all should do, but after menopause, it's really, really vital.
So
that was short.
We have so many ladies asking about that. So because I mean, if we look around us in the next XTRI world, I mean, the age average is higher than the short distance. Yeah, I love it. I know. Maybe because we get older, we get wiser. I don't know what's the point, but I think for the ladies, usually for the women, it's more difficult to get to understand every period of its age, of every age.
It is
so many passages, starting from 30, 40, 50, 60 and so on. I mean, I'm not in there, but I will be
but I think we need to know that when we hit the menopause, our estrogen levels drops really, and estrogen is actually an anabolic steroid that helps us gain muscles and also with the EPO and red blood cells. But it's really important to try to do something to get your body up to that level by, for example, training is maybe the best thing you could do. But it's important to think that maybe you're not supposed to train the same way you did when you were in your 30s. Actually, I think that is quite different. You should train with more weights, and you should train with harder intervals.
Okay. Mette, tack så mycket. Thank you so much. Was really a pleasure for us having you here, and good luck with your research. And next race, maybe? When?
You never know when it comes to me.
Okay. Okay.